It's another beautiful day and another day of Dose of Did You Know? And with me today is a dear soul sister loving friend of mine, Miss Athena. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great, although as we were talking earlier, I could be living in, your side of the world right now. We finally have sun over here on the East Coast. Finally, and you get it every day, but choices we make in life.
Oh, I'm sure you pay a lot less to live where you do.
Yes, from California. Yes, I think I
You
can
need
guarantee that. But share with the world in a snapshot, in one little like sparkle, who is Athena?
I always kind of it sounds so cheesy, but I'm a big kind of like superhero nerd. I have always not a comic book nerd perhaps, but definitely all the superhero movies because growing up as a child, I didn't have like we had like GI Jane and Tomb Raider for female role models that I wanted to be more like, not necessarily like the Barbie doll type. This wasn't me. And I always loved superhero movies. So the Avengers, I was watching the Avengers when the first time, and that scene where the Hulk grabs Loki and he's just slamming him. And there's that pause where Loki's like, "Is he done yet?" And that look of his on his face, like a pure like, "It's finally over." And then the Hulk just keeps going. That's like been my life, and it, you know. But I'm the person that gets up and fights back like Thor, not Loki. So
You know who you remind me of? Speaking of, I don't know her name, but the girl in Thor that's like his best friend from childhood. She's like this badass. She fights right next to him. Do you know who I'm talking about? She's dark haired. Um,
not the Valkyrie, the other one. I can't remember her name right now. But
but
yeah.
like he has his friends that are always
Mhm.
there helping him, and it's the female in it. That is who, when you were talking, came to my mind like that. I'm like, oh God, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, totally. I was always I never quite fit in ever. But I never wanted to either. I
Yeah.
wanted to be who I was. And if I didn't want to be a chameleon and turn myself into somebody that somebody else wanted. It just wasn't me.
Shoot, it's probably one of many of reasons why we were so drawn and connected because, people look at me now and they have this preconception of who I am and how I grew up. But I was that person. Like I had friends with everybody from it was so stereotypical when I grew up. You had the jocks, you had the cheerleaders, you had the druggies, you had the what were they called? The alternative group. And like the people in the alternative group were actually my closest best friends because they didn't care. They
Yep.
were just who they were
Yep.
and they expressed themselves. So some days I would come look into school like all like that I should fit into the cheerleader group, and sometimes I came to school like I should fit into the alternative group. It's
Yep.
basically how I am today. Like I
Yep.
wake up and how do I feel? I kind of you gave me some badass edge. So I'm like, I'm gonna be badass for Athena
Yep.
today. This is my badassness.
Yeah. You don't you have so many different characteristics about you don't fit in necessarily one group.
Yeah.
And a lot of women, I think, are afraid to embrace that dark side to them and their light maternal motherly side. They're either one or the other. They rarely embrace both sides because they are afraid of rejection. And
Mm,
I think, with us, it's we weren't afraid of who we were and who we are. And like a lot of times for me, what I had a hard time with was because I was going through so much abuse and so much trauma growing up. I never fit in with anyone unless they were also going through something similar. They don't even have to say it, you just know. You can
yeah.
tell by their body language, the way they talk. You don't even need to talk about it. You just know that they experienced some trauma in their life. And I would gravitate towards those individuals because they wouldn't make me feel so alone. They wouldn't make me feel so weird.
Right.
But the only problem was is those were a lot of times the troubled kids. They were the bad kids because they didn't understand, or they couldn't they didn't grasp that they didn't have to fight back and destroy their own lives in order to rebel.
Right.
And that's when, like, my parents were always like, "Why you always have to be with the bad kids?" And I wasn't a bad kid. I was like the good kid that, just knew what they were going through. So,
Yeah. Well, it's easier to not deal and to block out than it is to actually deal. So I think that's where, and especially as kids, that's kind of how we go. But Andrew here is watching and he's like, Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. She is, which goes into a whole other, like, she actually, I gotta tell you, she actually is a comic book hero, FYI. Like, badass. Okay.
I made
Not
myself
only
one.
a combat vet, like, not like seriously a combat vet. I mean, the stories that you shared with me, and even when we were talking about the documentary, when we were in Hollywood and we were, drinking wine and eating pizza and salad and laughing and just, yeah. So you're badass in reality. You're badass in a comic book. You're a badass as an author. You have a jewelry line. Like, what? Okay, first of all, what don't you have? what don't you do? And secondly, because you grew up, so I've got all of these questions. You did grow up with trauma, sexual abuse, mental. You grew up with all of it that could have put you in a projection so much in the other way, like we were kind of talking about with the groups you hung out with. But there was some sort of love inside you. I always feel like love is healing and love gets us out, and I believe it comes from God. You can believe where it comes from, wherever. But can you talk about that part of, like, did you feel love at that time, or was it just momentum and movement that pushed you, and then you realized and could open and embrace love?
I didn't know what love was. I had no idea of the actual, like, true concept and definition of it, because what I had been exposed to, what love was shown, was control and shoving doctrine and religion down your throat and constantly being afraid of getting in trouble. And I was talking to my best friend recently about, like, what I did when I got in trouble. So I was a really good kid. He's like, why would you always get in trouble? I'm like, well, I would get in trouble because, like, the church I went to growing up was a cult. It really was. And I would get phone we would have, like, Sunday brunch, or Sunday, like, after we got home from church, we always had a meal together. We always had to sit down as a family and have a meal together. And that phone would ring and I would cringe because usually it was about me. It was about me falling asleep in church. It was about me doodling, drawing pictures in my Bible because the sermon was so incredibly boring, or I disagreed with it. And usually when I'm trying to listen and I disagree with something, it's all over my face. So then I would get phone calls about that, or I get phone calls about, well, you need to, dress more modestly because you made me stumble as a man. I was like 12 years old. 12 years old, getting phone calls about wearing provocative clothing at 12.
Yeah, that puts kind of a concept into your mind that is disturbing.
Yeah. Yep. And women were treated, in the church I grew up in, we weren't allowed to talk. If women had a prayer request, we had to hand it to the man and they had to announce it for us.
Oh yeah, this is definitely a cult.
There was
This
a
is yeah,
sex
cult
trafficking
rooted
ring.
in religion, right?
Yeah. So when people try and, like, oh, they try and push religion on me, I'm like, you have no idea. No, I'm God and I are good, but organized religion for me it's not gonna happen.
It's not your jam. It's not your jam. You
No,
have
it
your
pushes
own.
me further away.
Yeah, yeah. Let's, but this is one of the things I love, and this is why you and how you embraced love, is that we can have conversations about religion. We can have conversations about God. We can have these kinds of thoughts. And there's no, I'm not pushing anything. I don't want anybody to believe what I believe. You got to believe what you want. You don't have that. You don't, you've let go. You can have an open conversation and you're not holding on to a fear that, oh, God, is Danny going to be like trying to get me to go to her church because we're having an open conversation? That takes a lot. How did you get there? Or I mean that's a very long conversation, I know, but are there key points that you can share of how you let go of some of that fear of
Yeah. So, well, to finish the love topic, I didn't know what love was until my sister was born. And the moment she was born, what I felt inside for her, I was like, that's love. And I couldn't at that point, there was a huge turning point in my life where I was like, if that's love, then why can't anyone love me like that? So it broke me. It really did. But it healed me at the same time. Um, and then as far as how I let go of a lot of that stuff was the other thing that they incorporated into our, training and our learning was that dinosaurs and seahorses were like unicorns and dragons. They weren't real. Because dinosaurs disagreed with the whole creation idea and evolution. So we were taught growing up that they didn't exist. We were being lied to by the public. So we were completely isolated and controlled in a very cult-like atmosphere to segregate us from all the outside influence. So I was homeschooled. I know I'm surprised I'm like as normal as I am because that should be
seriously.
Yeah. But and then I went to it was I can't remember. It was part of the church, I think, and we went to the aquarium because they wanted us to learn about God's creation and stuff. And there was a seahorse. What? What is this? And then at that moment, I was like, what else have they been lying to me about? So I started researching. So every time I get to go to the library, I wasn't allowed to go in certain sections, but I could go into science. I was allowed to go into the science sections because those were still, approved of by the church, but not evolution and not all that kind of stuff. So I started learning about different things. And then ever since then, I need to know the truth. I need to understand something. I need it broken down in order for me to be like, okay, I either am going to believe that or okay, I understand why you believe that. I don't, but I need to understand something to be able to process it and move on from it. So I just started and I like to talk to people. I like to actually get their side of the story and their information because what this person said about me is absolutely 100% completely not who I am. And that's been done to me a lot. And that's also been done to a lot of people. So you get the media nowadays, they completely twist and alter it to be completely opposite of what you intended it to be in the first place. So even research is probably one of the most scientific things you can do to get the truth, but even that's altered, even that's skewed because people's perceptions of what's going on can be completely different than what actually is. So uh, huge example of that is I was studying and researching sex trafficking before I moved to Thailand. When I got there, I had to I had to drop my dissertation and change topics because what was written, what was researched was not the truth. So it just shows you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't take one paragraph, one research paper and say this is doctrine. A lot of people do disagree with me on some of the stuff I post and share. Yeah, a lot of the stuff is from other people's research, but what I try to do is get everyone's point of view. So when I post stuff about pedophiles, and very controversial stuff where I'm actually trying to explain and break down what a pedophile is and what they do and why they do it. people are like, they should all burn in hell. They should all like just be beheaded and like castrated and stuff. And I'm like, but as a researcher, as somebody that relies on the truth and different things like that, I want to share the truth and not my opinion.
Right. Gosh, I didn't know, like, I guess I knew it, but I didn't connect it all. That definitely, because how you were as a child is who you are today. That wanting to know the truth, not skewing opinions based on what you've heard, researching and finding, that has to be part of your healing and loving. Being open to love, is that how you process?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
And
helped you to understand.
yeah, and you also, I believe that you need too often, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. I understand that, but that doesn't translate into real life, because especially when it comes to love. When it comes to love, the way I want to be loved is not the way they love me.
Mm,
The way they want to be loved is not the way I want to love them. So you have to really understand what love is, what their not religion, what their vocabulary of love is, what their
yes.
capacity of love is. You have to allow them to love you the way they love you. And that's an extremely hard thing to do, because so many people are like, why don't you love me? Why don't you love me? Well, maybe they are loving you in the way that they know how.
Hmm.
And, if that's not enough for you, then you move on and you find somebody that can love you the way you need to be loved, and they reciprocate that.
Yes, yes, I just wrote about that in one of my posts, because when you try to change someone's way of loving, you are changing that human being altogether. So everything that attracted you to them in the first place, you're ripping them away. So you in yourself, in your own hands, in your own thoughts, in your own worlds, you are self-destructing your relationship, because no one is ever going to love the way you do. It's impossible, because we're individuals.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, and that kind of goes even further when people, it's so hard for people to be an individual. They try to fit into these boxes, right? So then, therefore, you have to fit a category of love into that
Yes.
box, where that means,
Yes.
I'm, oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. It's the ripple effect
Yep.
of everything.
Yeah. So if that's why so many relationships fail, is they start out and it's like the honeymoon phase, and you're trying your best to show them your best foot forward, and you try and be the person you think they want.
Right.
And, eventually your person is going to come out. Who you are will show. And that's why it's like, because even in friendships, in any kind of a relationship, if you don't show who you are, it will come out in the long run. I'm not saying come out and be like, so, I was raped when I was 11 years old, and this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. And by the way, I don't ever want to get married. I don't, like, I can't have kids ever again. Like, you don't like drop the atomic bomb on them, but you don't show up and be somebody you aren't
Yeah.
completely, especially, oh, you don't transform into somebody you think they want. Be yourself.
Right. Yeah. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of crap. That's what you're fulfilling,
Yep.
is fake crap. It won't last, because it will, you're right, it will come. So that feeling of love that you said you felt when your sister was born, is that still that same feeling? Obviously, it's different because it's not your sister. There are other things. But did that develop? Is that the same feeling you feel now? I mean, obviously, it's matured and morphed, but can you see a similarity in that feeling, that when you first felt love is how you feel it now?
There's I believe that there's all sorts of different kinds of love. I mean, that's why I have my grandmother. She was absolutely amazing. I lived with her when I moved from Michigan back to California, and she taught me so much about just love and life. And her big thing was the Greek word, because in Greek there's, I believe, 4 or 5 different words for love in Greek. And I love that about it because we throw that word around so frivolously.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you, and that could be to somebody. I've had people say, "Oh, I love you," and I like knew them for a week. And I'm like, okay, do you even know me? What do you mean you love me? Then you're like, wait, what? Huh? And then you have those boyfriends that are like, they drop the L word, and you're like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? No, I won't sleep with you. And I know that's the only reason you said that. Like, come on, I'm not stupid. I wasn't born yesterday. But she taught me that, the word agape is basically kind of like she was more religious. So it was the word for unconditional love. And that's the way God loved his children and the way and to me, that was the way I loved my sister unconditionally. It didn't matter if anyone, it didn't matter what she did. I would always have this indescribable love for her. And I, I never felt that for anyone else. My mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, and I loved them to death, but it wasn't that I felt like she was mine. I held her from the moment she was born. I saw her born. I held her, I raised her, she was my kid, basically. And I would have done absolutely anything in the entire world for her. She really was mine. So that kind of love is something I've always kind of set the bar, like that's love to me. And I didn't understand if that could ever correlate into an actual romantic love. Because I had my heart broken before, I had boyfriends I did love. I absolutely loved. I would have married one of them. And then I met somebody that it hit me so hard because I couldn't control it. It was the same moment. As soon as I felt that, I was like, God, no, because he's married. And I fought it and I fought it and I fought it for years. And it was because I believed it was wrong. I didn't, and I was just like, why would God make me feel this way? I had no control over it. It was the same exact feeling that I felt for her. And I still feel the exact same way today. And that was 12 years ago.
Wow.
So, and it's hard, and that opened my eyes to so many different things, because people will call me a homewrecker, they've called me a whore, they've called me all sorts of every kind of horrible name under the sun. And I get where they're coming from. I do. Because I would feel the same way. In fact, I did a podcast with somebody that she hadn't read my book fully yet. And so she actually told me that she wouldn't be posting my podcast with her because she disagreed with my life, that one particular aspect of it.
But that goes back to
Judgment.
twisting facts like research, right? That goes back to news. That goes back to misusing your power and your voice. You don't have to agree with someone to have a conversation and put it out there because it's news, it's the world, it's reality.
And every story is different. You look back, when people like kings and queens, and you were, arranged marriages and different things that actually kept you in a relationship that you didn't want to be in, or that, there's so many different there's numerous different types of religions, there's numerous types of relationships and definitions of love. There's people that have, like, what is that, sister wives, they all love the same. I don't know how they do it. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to be like, that is evil, that's wrong, you're all going to hell type thing. Because I just because I can't understand it, I can't understand loving someone like that more than one person, doesn't mean it can't happen. And that experience with him showed me so much that I was being ignorant. I was being judgmental. And it was a reality check for me. And I had to open my eyes to a lot of things, and it made me a better person. It made me more open. It made me more like life is, there's so much out there. And if you put yourself in a little box and you shut all the doors and bar all the windows, you are missing out on so much life has to offer.
Hmm.
And, people allow their ignorance to prevent them from such joy in life. So,
It's true. And what I was thinking when you were talking is, I don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with certain people's actions or understand them, whatever, but I definitely do not want the power of putting a judgment on them. So there's a difference between not agreeing,
yep,
not acting that way yourself, not believing that, that is the right way, and judgment. Two totally separate pieces in my world. Because once you put that judgment, then you're stepping into some greater power, and that is way too much responsibility. Way too much responsibility, I feel.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Like,
I think we're on
I was,
the same page with that. Like, woo! So let's talk before we have to wrap up, because I can. There's so much I can share and talk with you about, but I want to talk about your book
Mhm.
because that is probably, from the title of your book, that is the most truth, kind of pure love. And when I say that, people are like, love. I mean, I'm going to let you, we'll talk about the title of your book, but you were so, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, this is the title of my book. And if you're going to publish it and bring me all this money, but make me change the title of my book, nope, I'm out.
Yep.
Because you're taking away from, I mean, you put love into that book. You have to, because you don't bear all without a sense of purity and love behind it. So um, let's talk about your book. Let's talk about the title of your book.
Yeah. So I was actually living in Thailand studying sex trafficking and how culture influences resilience. That's a huge, another chapter from my past where I couldn't understand, why was I different? How did I survive this and they didn't? It's resilience. It's about how you survive something and how well you deal with it. So I was living in Thailand, and I had a friend there, and I was, shared with him a lot of my stories, and he was a kind of like a up and coming movie producer, and he was like, "You need to write this down. You need to either, we'll put it into a script, put it into a book, whatever. You need to share this with other people." And I had always been told that, but I was like, I was kind of having one of those. I got this shirt in Jamaica, and it said YOLO. The whole, like, remember the "you only
Yes.
live life," that they had that phrase back, like a couple years ago. And I had adopted that philosophy. You only live once. And I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. So I spent hours and hours and hours every day in my Thai apartment. As I'm watching across the way, there's like literally, so surreal. I'm living in Thailand, and there's like people showering in buckets, like women with their boobs hanging out, like right across from me, because they all lived in this one little building. They were the workers. So they were like construction workers and maids and different things, and they all lived in the opposite building of me. So I'm sitting out on my, like on my computer, and the windows open, and they're just out there like dumping water on themselves and showering and then going and doing their business, their day. And it was an incredible experience. And I would, just pour out my heart and soul onto paper, typing and stuff. And there were things that I had shared in that book that I had never told anyone in my life. And I was like, if I'm going to put it all out there, I'm going to put it all out there. If I'm going to share my story, it's going to be my story. It's going to be the truth. It's going to be who I am. And I paid dearly for it, because a lot of my truth involved other people's truths as well. And I never wanted to hurt anyone. That was not my intention. But in the same, you know, a lot of people really did me wrong. And I can't share that, which was a huge impact in my life, without hurting people. And it wasn't intentional. I didn't use real names. I did my absolute best to hide who they were, not because of I was lying, not because I was trying to hide the truth or whatever. It was because I didn't want to hurt anyone at all.
Well, right. You're telling your story, not their story. They're just a player in it. So it doesn't matter. You change their names all you want. It doesn't change the fact of the story. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
appropriate.
Yeah. So I had kind of finished as up to the point where I was at in my life. I was done. I was, like sitting in a bar in Thailand, and I was trying to come up with a title. And the day before, I was messing with a couple different ones, and then it hit me, and I was like, "That's it. I am thankful for it." So I said, "Thank you for raping me." That's going to be the title of my book. I was sitting in this bar, and I was telling this guy about my story and my book. He's like, "Well, what are you going to call it?" And I told him, and he fell off the bar stool.
Well, yeah.
And he was like, "You cannot write that." And I was like, "I can and I am." And he's like, "But people will take it wrong. What if people will say that you wanted that?" And I was like, "Then they don't have the balls to read the book in the first place." So,
And when you read it, because I remember we were at an event in San Diego, a military wives event, and the book was out there, and a woman came in. Do you remember this? She looked at it, and you could tell like she was not okay.
people were afraid to go pick it up.
Yeah. And then by the end of the event, by the end of you talking, she was like, "Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much." It was a whole different side. There was something released in her that was okay. But again, the first time, because she had her own sexual experiences that were, that traumatizing. Um, but again, when you are so blunt and so honest and come from a place of purity, if you wrote that name out of a place of anger, I think it'd be something totally different.
Oh, it would be a big.
Yeah, but it's because it came from love, because it came from your heart, you're actually changing lives of so many men and women out there. It's like
And
I can't give you enough hands down or claps or whatever.
it's something I do still wrestle with because, I wanted to reach as many people as possible, and it has really kind of people don't want to know the truth. They don't want to hear that. They want to stay in their victimhood. They want to avoid talking about the difficult topics. So, I mean, if you go into a library right now, and I did this in several libraries, I found one or two books about stories about sexual assault and rape. And they were very vague,
Yeah.
or they were like the compilation stories where they basically just took one chapter of what happened in their life. They didn't exactly, talk about what happened before, what happened after, how did they, all that kind of stuff. So
I almost see it as a self-help book. And one of your biggest, I think, marketing tools is your voice, is you talking, is you going out there online, being comic book here. You hit so many different genres of people in what you do that the people that are ready to heal are receptive.
yeah.
And the ones that aren't, they're not going to understand and comprehend what the book is anyways. It's just going to be words on a paper. So I think
Yeah.
it's in my personal opinion, the book is that powerful. There's always a time and a place for everybody. And when you're in a place to be open to a healing, this in my opinion is the book to read, because you will heal through it. It'll be hard, but healing is hard. Any kind of healing is hard. It's not like give me some fairy dust and my wash my memory away and I live this perfect, have this whole different illusion of my life. But that's the type of book it is. If you're ready, or if you know somebody, this is another kind of aspect I see to it. If you know somebody that needs this book that isn't ready, you read the book, because you'll get things out of it to help them heal, to be ready to move forward.
And it also, I had a lot of military, like high ranking military members, veterans now, people that have gotten out of the military, and even people that had, that are still in, have read it. And they're like, every male leader needs to read this, because this is what is really going on in our military. This is what our women are experiencing. And they told me that it would have made them a better leader. It would have made them recognize things more. Because, a lot of people haven't been in that situation, and they don't understand why people don't report. They don't get it. But if by reading what I went through, they understand.
Yeah.
And, even significant others that had, their loved one was sexually assaulted and different things like that, they don't know how to deal with it. No one's talking about it. So how are they supposed to understand? How are they supposed to feel sympathy or empathy or whatever when they have absolutely no idea, because their significant other refuses to talk about it? They don't understand. So if they read a story that actually happened, that actually didn't sugarcoat anything, because if you've read it, it is brutal. It is. I don't hold back. I in detail describe what happened. It's a very, it could definitely be kind of watered down a little bit for younger, for the younger generation, not younger generation, but for the younger, reading group. But it is something that they need to hear too, because this happened to me from 11 to 14 years old. It is happening to children right now as we speak. With this whole pandemic thing going on, the increase in sexual child violence is insane.
Yeah.
It's all, their only safe place was at school. And I know that feeling. I never missed one single day of school because I wanted to get away from that house.
Yeah. Whole other side that we can,
Just, just
yeah.
knowing that they're all home right now breaks my heart.
I know. Oh, you have the biggest heart ever. You are doing so much good in this world, and I just am blessed that we were connected and stayed connected, and I had that time with you in Hollywood, that one-on-one, and oh my God, days with you and Joyce and Chad. Oh gosh, what a fun time that was.
We need to do it again.
Oh yeah, we do. So with closing, I ask everybody this question because as we're talking about, this is about love and life and moving through and becoming who you are. In this moment today, right now, as you sit here, I know we touched on it a little bit, but it morphs. Right now, what does love mean to Athena in this moment?
Truth. It's about being you. It's about, embracing people's truth. It's about loving them for who they are. And if you don't, that's okay. You don't have to love everyone. I don't. I don't like a lot of people. Once I stay at home, I'm like, stay away. I'm gonna be my little. But it's because of the fakeness.
Yeah.
I would love you so much. I have said this since I was a kid. I would rather be friends with prostitutes and assholes than I would with Bible thumping, fake, prissy, perfect liars. Be you.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. That is a perfect definition. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And everybody, go out, grab the book. If you're not ready to read it now, one day you will be, or one day somebody will need it. So it is a great self-help. It's a great story. It's a great self-help. It's a great training tool. I mean, it hits all of the boxes for you. So, and follow Athena because there's a lot of fun and excitement that when you follow her on her pages, you don't know what you're going to get, where you're going to get it.
I know.
But you get it. It's always the truth. It's the best of your knowledge. It's who you are. So you can guarantee that. And I will see you. We will talk soon. Have a great, great rest of your day.
All right. Love you.
Mwah.
Are you still there?